I was known as the Ghost of Suhui, a phantom corporate consultant flitting between high-value semiconductor firms and the academic circuit in Shanghai. It was 2018, and the city felt less like a global metropolis and more like a high-tech pressure cooker. Every street corner, every taxi driver, every filtered Wi-Fi signal feeding data into the central nervous system of the CCP's surveillance apparatus. My anchor, my one point of reliable light in that relentless darkness, was Anya Petrova, code name Sparrow. She wasn't just my handler. She was my mentor, the woman who had plucked me out of Quantico and carved me into the asset capable of surviving 5 years deep cover. Our communication was elegant and esoteric. We used the sequence and duration of silence in obscure 19th century Czech string quartets as our one-time pad. The tension wasn't just the external pressure of the MSS watching, it was the psychological burden of being permanently on dash. I lived a life defined by negation. Never using the same route twice, never accepting an unexpected gift, never allowing a second of genuine, unguarded human connection. Anya understood this. She was the architect of my survival, designing my safe houses, providing the cover narratives, and, crucially, managing the incoming high-priority tasking from Langley. This current mission, Operation Titan, was the highest stake yet. It involved securing blueprints for a revolutionary quantum stealth system, currently housed in a protected facility near Pudong. Anya had been unusually precise in her instructions, demanding a level of mechanical adherence that felt uncharacteristic. She insisted I use the old, defunct Red Star ferry terminal for the final exfiltration signal drop, arguing its disuse made it safer. My gut, the finely tuned instrument that had kept me breathing, registered a faint, discordant hum in her planning, a note out of tune in our familiar string quartet. But trust was the currency of my existence, and Anya held the bank. I repressed the instinct, chalking it up to my own operational fatigue. I detailed the technical specs of my ingress, a sophisticated RF jammer disguised as a commemorative Olympic medallion, an injection of thermite paste into the data server's cooling unit designed to look like a minor electrical short, and the microdot receiver concealed within the clasp of my designer handbag. I ran the protocols once, twice, a third time. The mirror image staring back was Dr. Elise Dubois, a calculating, slightly brittle woman with too much ambition, the perfect, unremarkable cipher for a surveillance state. I adjusted the subtle wire woven into the lapel of my tailored suit, checking the dead man switch. The mission timer started at T-12 hours. The familiar scent of Shanghai's humid, electric air filled the room. I took a deep breath, preparing to step back into the spotlight that was designed to expose me. The target, Professor Chiao Meng, was known institutionally as the architect. He was the key researcher managing the final integration of the Titan protocol, a system that, if deployed, would render Western stealth technology obsolete overnight. My cover penetration had taken 9 months, relying on a slow, deliberate cultivation of Chiao's weakness, classical Chinese poetry, and extremely rare, high-grade Baijiu. The Titan data transfer was scheduled during the annual Institute of Advanced Physics fundraising gala, a chaotic, glittering nightmare of wealth, political ambition, and high-frequency jamming. Anya's plan was brilliant in its simplicity and vulnerability. Chiao would possess the encrypted files on a specialized, disposable hardware key, hidden within a bespoke Tibetan jade pendant he always wore for good luck. My extraction technique involved a calculated distraction. I would feign a fainting spell near the VIP security station, providing the microsecond window for a magnetic induction transfer to my handheld receiver, which looked like a luxury penlight. The tension lay not in the physical act, but in the environment. The MSS deployed facial recognition drones disguised as ventilation units, capable of spotting anomalous heart rate changes from 15 feet away. Anya had stressed that every moment counted, emphasizing that any deviation from the timing would mean catastrophic failure. She was adamant about the signal chain. After extraction, I was to proceed to the primary dead drop, a hollowed-out ceramic turtle in Yew Gardens, and then wait for the extraction signal at the old ferry terminal. Crucially, Anya had reiterated a specific contingency phrase: "The dragon sleeps beneath the mountain." which, if spoken to me by anyone other than her, meant the extraction team was compromised and I needed to initiate self-immolation of the data package and immediate isolation. I prepared the jade pendant for the swap, meticulously ensuring the decoy I would leave behind, a similar piece carrying a non-malicious but technically complex Trojan designed to waste their analytical time, was indistinguishable from the real object. The sheer volume of detail required to maintain the lie was exhausting. I remembered Anya once telling me, "April, the greatest weapon we have is their arrogance. They think no one can manage this level of sustained psychological warfare." Tonight, that sustained warfare felt closer to suicide. As I put on the final layers of my disguise, an elegant, bespoke dress that concealed 2 layers of Kevlar mesh and a specialized trauma plate, I felt the familiar numbness settle in, a necessary detachment from the operative reality. The countdown continued, the clock ticking towards the single point of contact that would either save my country or end my life in a sterile, Chinese detention facility. The gala was a sensory overload. Silk cheongsams, the thick, cloying smell of expensive cigars, and the ceaseless, high-pitched chatter of financial elites and state officials. I found Professor Chiao leaning against a marble pillar, ostensibly admiring a modern sculpture, but subtly running his hand over the jade pendant beneath his tie. T-minus 5 minutes. I engaged my target, initiating the pre-programmed conversational loop about a spurious archaeological find in Sichuan. His eyes, trained on quantum physics, glaze over appropriately. I moved in for the planned maneuver. At the specified moment, when a large, boisterous group of ministry officials laughed simultaneously, creating a sound barrier, I executed the feint. It was a practiced, dramatic collapse, enough to draw attention but not enough to cause serious panic. As the security guards rushed forward, I ensured my hand, clutching the penlight receiver, brushed Xiao's chest. Click! The magnetic transfer was instantaneous, quiet, and registered with the comforting vibration in my palm. The data was mine. The chaos subsided quickly. I was professionally assisted to a recovery room. But as I was being led past the main catering entrance, a flicker of movement froze the blood in my veins.
Anya.
She wasn't supposed to be here. She was disguised expertly as a high-end sommelier, her hair pulled back tightly, a dark red apron covering her usual elegant silhouette. She maintained perfect eye contact with me, a chilling, emotionless gaze that was utterly non-Anya. More critically, as a Ministry of State Security Counterintelligence Chief, identified as Deputy Director Lin, walked by, Anya performed an unscheduled, unsanctioned move. She discreetly, surgically, placed an unmarked, non-agency standard, small flash drive into the breast pocket of Lin's dinner jacket. Lin acknowledged the transfer with a micro-expression of detached satisfaction that only a seasoned operative could catch. It was a transfer of high-value intelligence, happening seconds after I had successfully acquired the Titan protocol. The initial assumption, Anya was simply running a side operation or confirming security, vanished. The signal was clear. She was simultaneously executing an operation that directly contradicted mine, providing material to the very people she was instructing me to deceive. The paranoia was no longer a professional tool. It was a screaming alarm. I maintained my outward composure, allowing the escort to guide me away, but the realization was a physical weight. Anya, my handler, was compromised. Worse, she was actively delivering intelligence to the MSS while I was still in the field, carrying data she knew I believed was real. I had acquired a data package, but I had also witnessed a betrayal of lethal magnitude. The game had just changed from espionage to survival against my own chain of command. The walk back to the primary safe house, a rental unit disguised as a professor's overly academic flat, was an exercise in calculated breathing. Every shadow held a potential threat. Every civilian felt like a deep cover asset. I used 3 counter-surveillance loops, changing vehicles twice, and walking through the dense crowd of the Nanjing Road pedestrian street, ensuring I activated several localized jamming signals disguised as phone chargers. Back inside the sterile silence of the safe house, sealed behind triple-layered composite doors, I immediately bypassed the agency-installed data analysis equipment. If Anya was compromised, every piece of hardware she authorized was potentially bugged or reporting back to her. I used my personal, fully isolated analysis rig, a heavily modified gaming laptop hidden within the apartment's air conditioning unit. I transferred the data from the penlight and started the decryption routine. The encryption layers were exactly as predicted: complex, quantum-resistant, and requiring my specific key. The file structure loaded. The header read, Titan Protocol Integration. I dove into the code. The first 90% was flawless, brilliant quantum encryption architecture. It looked real. Then came the tail end. The remaining 10% was not the core stealth algorithm as promised. It was a comprehensive log of low-level, internal MSS communications regarding localized pollution control and minor infrastructural spending in the immediate Pudong area. Bait. High-quality, technically dazzling bait designed to consume U.S. intelligence resources for weeks, while providing absolutely zero strategic value. Anya hadn't just set up a parallel operation. She had set up a distraction designed to waste Langley's time and, more crucially, to flush me out as the primary threat. I scrubbed the decoy data from the receiver, destroying the penlight with a localized magnetic pulse generator. My objective shifted from data extraction to survival and counterintelligence against my former handler. I realized the true horror. She didn't just flip. She used me as the final piece of theater to prove her value to the Mrs. I was meant to be caught, either with the high-grade bait or during the ferry terminal extraction, which I now knew would be a fatal trap. I initiated the Phoenix Protocol, the last resort, non-electronic survival doctrine I had developed years earlier. All communication lines were severed. All CIA dead drops were marked as hot and unusable. I had 5 pre-staged ghost identity packets scattered across the city, requiring physical retrieval. The first stop, a forgotten locker beneath a Buddhist temple in the old town, holding cash, a non-traceable burner phone, and a new, forged diplomatic passport identifying me as a Lithuanian cultural attaché. April Woods was dead. Dr. Elise Dubois was dead. Now, only the ghost remained, hunted by both the intelligence service she served and the enemy she was supposed to fight. My paranoia was validated, sharp and cold as a razor edge. I had 48 hours before the MSS realized the Titan Protocol was fake and began the systematic hunt for the one who delivered it, me. The Ghost Protocol mandated total operational silence and immediate physical dispersion. The safe house was now compromised. I had maybe 4 hours before the MSS, analyzing the security footage of the gala and Deputy Director Lin's timeline, would connect the dots. I needed to vanish into the city's concrete bloodstream. My first move was designed to sow maximum confusion, a false flag operation using the agency's compromised channels. I accessed a remote terminal, initiating a pre-programmed encrypted burst signal, a detailed, fabricated report claiming I had successfully extracted the Titan Protocol and was proceeding to the primary extraction point, the ferry terminal. This acted as digital chaff, sending both the MSS and, perhaps more painfully, the CIA to a location where I would not be. It bought me time. I left the apartment complex disguised as a maintenance worker, having spent 30 minutes meticulously altering my appearance using theatrical wax, tinted contacts, and a borrowed uniform from a laundry service bin. The physical act of evading the city's ubiquitous surveillance was exhausting. I walked the red routes, pathways known for intermittent camera failures or blind spots created by ongoing construction projects, routes I had mapped over 5 years. My first target, the Temple Locker. Navigating the twisting alleyways of the old town was a lesson in urban camouflage. I moved against the human flow, becoming invisible by being unremarkable. When I reached the temple, the smell of incense thick in the air, I retrieved the package. 50,000 renminbi in small, used bills, the Lithuanian passport, and a short-range, heavily encrypted radio transceiver. I didn't dare activate the phone yet. My focus shifted entirely to tracking Anya. I knew her patterns, her safe words, her comfort zones. If she had flipped, She would have certain logistical requirements, secure comms, a new local handler, and guaranteed exfiltration assets. The key was to locate her next prearranged contact. I remembered her discussing a minor academic conference in Beijing focused on Sino-Russian industrial cooperation, a dry, perfect cover for high-level intelligence meetings. I initiated the secondary phase of the Ghost Protocol, establishing a new identity as a journalist covering the Beijing conference, leveraging the Lithuanian cover. I needed to get out of Shanghai immediately. I booked a high-speed rail ticket using cash and a third-party, prepaid debit card, but not for Beijing. My ultimate destination would be Beijing, but the ticket was for Tianjin, a necessary diversion to break the inevitable digital tracking of large transport hubs. The stakes were no longer about the Titan protocol. They were about minimizing the damage Anya could inflict on the US network. She knew every alias, every dead drop, every procedural flaw. I needed to find her before she could auction off the operational matrix of the entire East Asia division. The paranoia was acute. I looked at the face of the elderly ticket agent, wondering if the micro camera in his eyeglasses was recording my micro expressions. I checked the collar of my borrowed jacket, nothing. But in this environment, absence of evidence was merely evidence of deeper concealment. The journey to Tianjin was a masterclass in operational asceticism. No electronic footprints. I relied on cash only, avoided eye contact, and spent the entire 4-hour train ride conducting counter-surveillance against the carriage itself, mapping every passenger, every luggage rack, every potential hidden lens. From Tianjin, I took an inner-city bus to Beijing, arriving in the Chaoyang district under the cloak of a heavy, smog-choked evening. I had located a secondary, completely anonymous crash pad, a forgotten apartment above a quiet, government-run printing shop, secured years ago using non-agency funds and a forged lease. It was cold, sparsely furnished, and thankfully, devoid of any obvious surveillance. My goal was simple: find Sparrow. Anya's profile suggested she would be operating close to her new assets, likely high-ranking members of the Ministry of State Security or the People's Liberation Army. I focused my surveillance not on government buildings, which would be too heavily monitored, but on her personal habits. Anya had a profound, inexplicable love for ancient Ming Dynasty architecture and frequented a specific, notoriously private tea house near the northern edge of the Forbidden City. I couldn't risk physical entry, so I deployed Firefly, a heavily modified, self-powered micro-drone disguised as a common sparrow. I spent 12 hours in a freezing, abandoned construction site overlooking the tea house complex, monitoring the subtle movements of the surrounding environment. It paid off. On the second rotation, the Firefly captured high-resolution thermal imaging. Inside a secure, screened courtyard, I saw her. Anya. She was not alone. She was seated across a low table from General Li Jifeng, a figure so senior in the PLA that his movements were usually only tracked by satellite. Crucially, they were not engaged in a tense negotiation or a clandestine exchange. They were talking quietly, intimately, sharing a simple tea service. The visual evidence was devastating. When they concluded their meeting, General Li performed a gesture of immense familiarity. He gently squeezed Anya's hand, a personal gesture far removed from the cold formality of a handler meeting a new asset. This wasn't a recent flip forced by compromise. This was a long-term, established relationship. Anya had been placed in CIA operations, perhaps even raised as a deep cover mole. I wasn't just betrayed. I was an expendable pawn in a much longer game designed to undermine the US intelligence architecture from the inside. The realization struck me with physical force. Anya hadn't just sold the Titan protocol. She had sold the integrity of the agency's entire Asian command. I had been her star pupil, the most trusted ghost she created, and the asset she was grooming to take the eventual fall. I knew then that extraction was no longer an option. I had to neutralize the threat, and the threat was the woman who taught me how to live. My focus shifted entirely from evasion to interception. I could not approach Anya directly in Beijing. The entire city was her theater, guarded by her co-conspirators. I had to force her out, to draw her toward a neutral, volatile border zone where the lines of authority blurred, somewhere like Macau or Hong Kong. I knew Anya's primary fear: being captured and interrogated by Langley. Her entire operational life rested on her ability to escape without providing actionable intelligence to the West. I decided to leverage this fear. Using the compromised CIA channels I had previously avoided, I uploaded a highly encrypted, non-traceable data packet. It was a fabricated after-action report, addressed directly to the Director of Asian Operations, claiming that Sparrow had successfully acquired the Titan protocol but had subsequently gone dark. The report concluded with a chilling statement that if Sparrow was not immediately recovered, the entire East Asia network would be considered fatally compromised. I knew this report would be intercepted and read by General Lee's security team. The immediate response would be an expedited extraction plan for Anya, designed to pull her out before Langley could mount a real search and seizure operation. I tracked the subsequent flurry of activity: a surge in encrypted traffic indicating flight reservations and secure ground transport routes heading south toward Guangzhou and Shenzhen. Anya was being shipped out, likely to a safe haven via a secure sea route. I needed to intercept her during the most vulnerable part of the journey, the transition zone near the border. My own operational assets were thin. I used the remaining RMB to purchase equipment on the black market: a suppressed, non-traceable microcarbine, specialized thermal optics, and several custom-made micro-EMP devices. My plan centered on a notorious smuggling route near Shenzhen, utilizing an old system of drainage tunnels that ran beneath the container port complex, leading out toward the Pearl River Delta. I knew Anya would travel light and fast, likely in a small convoy, but I also knew her operational style: meticulous planning mixed with a deep reliance on the integrity of the logistical chain. That integrity was my weakness and my weapon. I activated the final layer of my identity: a semi-retired freelance security specialist traveling for consultation in Macau. The last part of my journey involved a brutal 20-hour bus ride, culminating in a drop-off point near the Shenzhen industrial zone. I settled onto the hard plastic seat, the silence around me absolute. The weight of the weapon concealed beneath my jacket was nothing compared to the weight of the moral imperative. I had to eliminate the person who had defined my life, not for revenge, but for the necessary survival of the organization she was destroying. I intercepted the convoy just before dawn, in the sprawling, desolate industrial complex bordering the tunnels. The air was thick with diesel fumes and coastal fog. Anya's escort consisted of 4 highly trained operatives, not MSS, but specialized PLA security, silent and lethal. My goal was not to engage the security team, but to neutralize them quickly and take Anya alive, briefly, for intelligence extraction. I deployed the micro-EMP devices disguised as discarded soda cans near the entrance of the tunnel, timing the burst to overload the vehicle's electrical systems and the guards' electronic communications. The effect was instantaneous. The convoy stuttered to a halt, plunging the area into relative silence and confusion. I moved with surgical speed, utilizing the thermal optics. I took down the 2 lead operatives with non-lethal, high-impact rounds, precise hits to the shoulder joints and kneecaps. The 3rd guard, realizing the attack was localized and professional, pulled Anya from the vehicle, dragging her toward the nearest service access point. I pursued them into the tunnels, a labyrinth of damp concrete and echoing drips. This was my terrain: low light, enclosed spaces, intimate warfare. The 4th guard engaged me, but he was expecting a CIA extraction team, not a single, silent predator. I disabled him quickly, securing his weapon. I found Anya and the 3rd guard 50 meters deeper, near a junction. The guard held Anya as a shield. I fired a warning shot, precisely engraving the concrete next to his head. "Stand down. I only want her." The guard hesitated, then looked at Anya. She shook her head, a silent signal instructing him to fight. Loyalty runs deep in the CCP. I had no choice. I neutralized the guard permanently, a clean, necessary kill. Anya stumbled back, recognizing me instantly despite the dirt, the tactical gear, and the sheer desperation in my eyes. Her expression shifted from controlled, professional panic to a chilling, detached sorrow. "April," she whispered, "I hoped they would catch you before this." I shoved the microcarbine into the small of her back, guiding her deeper into the tunnel complex, away from the inevitable recovery team. "You sold us out, Anya. You sold the Ghost Network. I need every name, every contact right now." She laughed, a short, broken sound that bounced off the walls. "You don't understand, April. I didn't flip. I went home. And you? You were the ultimate sacrificial offering. I traded the blueprints for the future of the East Asia Division. All the names, all the safe routes for guaranteed passage. They know everything you did, everyone you worked with. You were always meant to be disposable." The revelation was the ultimate cruelty. I had been building my legend of indestructibility, while she had been building a foundation of sand, designed to collapse precisely when I needed it most. My mission had shifted again. No longer just intelligence gathering, but reckoning. I had to deliver this intelligence to Langley, even if it meant delivering her corpse. The final stage required forcing Anya across the administrative line that separated the mainland's jurisdiction from the semi-autonomous zone, the Macau border. It was a legal no-man's land, rife with triad activity and fragmented security, the only place where a sanctioned execution might go unnoticed by central surveillance. I used the back roads and fishermen's boats, relying on old contacts, paying exorbitant cash fees to move us swiftly across the delta, keeping Anya heavily sedated and restrained. I staged the confrontation in an abandoned, decaying lighthouse on the farthest tip of Kowloon Island, its beam long dead, casting a dramatic, eerie light filtered by the pollution haze. I secured Anya to a rusted railing, removing her sedation. I set up my comms rig, a short burst system designed to transmit a highly compressed data file containing the specifics of her betrayal, timed to hit a receiver on a friendly freighter far out in international waters. "Tell me how long," I demanded, staring into the face of the woman who had once taught me compassion was a weakness. "Was it before I even started? Were you waiting for me at Quantico?" Anya met my gaze, her eyes cold, devoid of the maternal warmth I had always relied on. "Since the beginning. My assignment was deep integration, long-term asset development. The CIA offered me excitement. My country offered me stability. I chose the latter. You were the only thing I genuinely regretted losing, April." "And the names?" I pressed. "How many ghosts did you put in the ground?" "Everyone operational since 2012, she admitted, her voice flat, clinical. "The entire Taiwan network, the Hong Kong financial spies, the deep cover academic in Wuhan. All compromised." My hand tightened on the weapon. The cost was staggering. I had come prepared to extract intelligence and, ideally, bring her back for justice, but her admission confirmed that her survival was a greater threat than her death. "I have to send you back, Anya," I said, not as a threat, but as a statement of operational necessity. "You can't live with what you know." She offered a genuine, sad smile. "I know. You'll be haunted by this, April. The difference between us is, I can live with the ghosts I create." She shifted slightly against the railing. My instinct screamed. Before I could react, she moved with lightning speed, pulling a tiny, polished silver object, a micropistol designed to look like a necklace pendant, from beneath her collar. She knew I wouldn't search the jewelry she had worn for years. The muzzle was pointed directly at my heart, but I was faster. I had anticipated the final act of operational pride. My shot was clean, precise, and necessary, silencing her attempt to neutralize the evidence permanently. The sound echoed briefly in the dead tower, absorbed quickly by the vastness of the sea. I immediately activated the data transfer. The final act was the hardest, securing the evidence of her betrayal, the micropistol, her identification tags, and a final coded journal, then cleaning the scene. I left the lighthouse as the first pale light of the new day crept over the horizon, abandoning the only person who truly knew me to the silent, unforgiving jurisdiction of the sea. The extraction from Macau was a masterpiece of paranoia-fueled logistics. I used the microradio to signal the waiting friendly freighter, the Mariner, miles offshore. The coordinates were precise, relayed via a unique frequency burst that would instantly self-destruct upon acknowledgement. Getting to the pickup point required navigating the treacherous, poorly monitored waters of the Pearl River Delta. I commandeered a small, fast fishing vessel, operating it alone through the early morning fog, careful to skirt the main maritime traffic routes. The anxiety was crushing. Every patrol boat, every distant radar ping, felt like the opening salvo of a new interception. I reached the extraction point, a predetermined latitude and longitude that existed solely in the open ocean. A specialized, submersible drone surfaced silently, guided by the freighter's satellite link. I transferred the mission package, the physical evidence, Anya's final log, and a highly detailed voice recording of her confession and operational breakdown. The drone submerged immediately. My part of the mission was done. I scuttled the fishing boat and floated for 30 minutes in a specialized thermal survival suit until the Mariner approached. Stepping onto the deck of the freighter, under the watch of anonymous, heavily armed U.S. Navy SEALs, was the first moment in 6 years I felt the pressure lift, only to be replaced by a profound, paralyzing emptiness. The subsequent 2 weeks of debriefing at a safe site in Diego Garcia were brutal. I provided the evidence, the timelines, the proof of Anya's deep cover status, and the staggering list of compromised assets. Langley, in turn, executed a catastrophic, painful operational purge across Asia, pulling every agent Anya had ever managed. Hundreds of lives, careers, and decades of infiltration were sacrificed to contain the damage. My official status was restored, my cover shredded, and my operational designation changed to inactive/deep trauma. The agency closed the file on Anya Petrova as killed in action by unknown hostile force while securing high-value assets. They could not afford the truth that their most trusted handler was a mole, to destabilize the entire framework of trust. I was a ghost who had hunted another ghost, and the experience had burned away the last vestiges of my emotional resilience. I received citations, accolades, and a full psychological evaluation that concluded I was fit for duty, but irreparably scarred. Back in the sterile quiet of my designated safe house in Northern Virginia, I stared out the window, watching the familiar, non-threatening suburban sprawl. The silence was the worst. I had survived the constant surveillance, the lethal threats, and the operational exhaustion, only to be defined by the singular, devastating betrayal of the woman I trusted most. The ultimate lesson of my time in China wasn't about the sophistication of CCP surveillance. It was that the true enemy is always internal, wearing the face of a friend. I carried the weight of the purged network, the operational chaos, and the cold, unblinking realization that in this life, the only truly reliable asset is profound, total distrust, especially of those who claim to protect you. I am April Woods, the ghost of Suhui, and I am permanently alone. The aftermath of the Anya Petrova incident, internally codenamed Sparrowfall, necessitated my immediate retirement from active field work. Langley needed to dissect the forensic trail of her 5-year deep cover, a process that demanded my constant, painful participation. For 6 months, I lived inside a windowless SCF, recreating every coded message, every operational decision, every seemingly innocuous conversation we ever shared. The process revealed the true scope of her patience. She had been laying breadcrumbs for years, providing low-value but enticing data to keep the CIA invested, while systematically identifying and documenting the entire organizational structure of the East Asia Division. The most psychologically damaging discovery was the existence of the Protocol Z, an alternate, highly sophisticated kill switch plan designed to activate a complex cyber attack on critical U.S. infrastructure, timed to go live if she were ever captured alive. My eliminating her in Macau had inadvertently prevented a catastrophic breach far worse than the loss of the spy network. The agency's reaction was measured, clinical, and profoundly cynical. I was offered a permanent position as an instructor at the farm, teaching advanced countersurveillance and the psychology of deep cover moles. They believed my enforced paranoia was now my greatest asset. I accepted, but the transition was excruciating. I went from navigating the lethal, immediate reality of Beijing's security state to teaching theory to earnest, naive recruits who still believed in sides and justice. My lectures were infused with a cold realism that often unsettled them. I focused relentlessly on the concept of necessary isolation, the psychological scaffolding required to operate for years without genuine connection. I taught them that the surveillance state is not just cameras and microphones. It's the erosion of trust, the calculated removal of internal cohesion. I am forced now to live a quasi-normal life in the suburbs, surrounded by the mediocrity of civilian routine, yet every mundane noise, every unfamiliar vehicle triggers the high alert status my nervous system can no longer switch off. The quiet here is deafening, a vacuum where the adrenaline used to reside. I often wake up thinking I smell the incense of the temple where I grabbed my first ghost packet, or the diesel fumes of the Shenzhen tunnels. The truth is, Anya didn't just compromise the CIA network, she compromised me. She broke the last thread of faith I had in the mission itself. Now, I spend my days detailing the mechanics of betrayal, hoping to arm the next generation against the shadows I now know are unavoidable. The real ghost, I realize, wasn't the operative who vanished into the crowd. It was the trust one left behind in the lighthouse on Kowloon Island, submerged and irretrievable. The final operational scar left by Sparrowfall was the lingering question of the Titan protocol itself. While the data I extracted was bait, the existence of the genuine quantum stealth technology was confirmed. Langley, reeling from the internal compromise, tasked me with a purely advisory role, dissecting the methodologies Anya would have used to protect the real data. This involved moving into the rarefied air of counter-cyber warfare, a domain requiring total dedication. I spent months building simulated environments, trying to think like Anya, thinking like the enemy who knew my every reflex. I determined that the genuine blueprints must have been secured not digitally, but physically, placed somewhere remote and secure by General Lee himself after Anya's handover at the tea house. My deduction led us to a highly classified research bunker beneath the Chilean mountains in Gansu province, a site previously dismissed as a low-priority weather monitoring station. The logic was sound. Why trust fragile digital media when physical, remote storage offered superior long-term security against detection? My contribution was purely theoretical, but the subsequent U.S. satellite reconnaissance confirmed the high-level security perimeter at the remote site. The agency mounted a high-risk, non-CIA extraction mission, a specialized technical team flown in covertly. The operation was a success, confirming that the real Titan protocol, stored on specialized, shielded crystalline media, was exactly where I predicted. The retrieval of the true intelligence, ironically, became the final, undeniable proof of Anya's methodical betrayal. She had ensured the U.S. wasted resources on a digital phantom while the physical threat matured in the Chinese interior, only to be recovered thanks to the very paranoia she instilled in me. Yet, the victory felt hollow. I realized that the true espionage battlefield is not fought with guns or even algorithms, but through the slow, agonizing corrosion of human faith. The years of living the double life in Shanghai had prepared me for danger, but not for the intimate malice of a friend turning executioner. My work concluded with a final, highly classified report detailing the Sparrowfall Doctrine, a new procedural guideline demanding extreme redundancy and compartmentalization in all handler-asset relationships. The recommendation was stark: assume all human points of contact are compromised after 6 months. The price of survival, I concluded, was permanent institutional cynicism. I received my final commendation, signed by the director himself, acknowledging my singular contribution to national security recovery. It sits framed on my wall, next to the small, cold steel casing that contained Anya's micro-pistol. It serves as a permanent, chilling reminder that in the shadow game, the deepest cut is always administered by the hand you extended for help. The ghost is home, but the silence still screams. My current role involves teaching advanced psychological resilience, or, as I privately call it, how to live with the scars. The agency tries to reintegrate us, the deep cover operators, But the truth is, we are operational mutations, unfit for the sanitized world of spreadsheets and quarterly reviews. We carry the residue of the surveillance state within us, a permanent filter of suspicion applied to all stimuli. I watch the recruits, bright, eager, believing in clear missions and clean endings, and I see the potential for their own Sparrowfall. I design training exercises meant to break that naive trust, simulating scenarios where the friendly face in the adjacent safe house is the ultimate enemy. One particular drill focuses on the unplanned encounter, the moment a trusted contact introduces a non-vetted asset into the operational chain. It is based directly on my observation of Anya at the Shanghai Gala. The lesson is simple: never accept a gift, a directive, or a human connection that deviates even minutely from the established protocol. The cost of adherence is vigilance. The cost of deviation is fatal. I use my own narrative sparingly, couching the details in generalized terms, but the intensity of the trauma bleeds through. I emphasize the physical toll of paranoia, the chronic lack of deep sleep, the hypervigilance that exhausts the adrenal glands, the necessary isolation that destroys the soul. I am now tasked with creating the next generation of ghost operators, fully expecting that one day, one of them might be called upon to neutralize the others. It is a necessary evil, the logical extension of the game. I ended my last lecture with the official closing statement from the Sparrowfall file, the lie of killed in action by unknown hostile force. But then, I looked them dead in the eye, dropping my voice to the low, conspiratorial tone I perfected in the Suhui district. That is the agency line. The truth is, there are no unknown hostile forces. There are only forces you failed to identify, forces you let get close enough to stab you. And if you are truly effective, the day will come when the most hostile force you face is the reflection in the mirror, holding the weapon. The classroom was silent, the reality of the lesson finally sinking in. I am April Woods, former ghost, now the keeper of the deepest secret. We are defined not by the enemies we defeat, but by the friends we are forced to eliminate.